Nebraska Preps postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
That's the big voice guy. That means we're back for another week, which means I get my main man, JP, Jacob Padilla, joining us for another week of Nebraska Preps postgame. JP, how was the weekend, buddy? Your Packers hung on. You have to feel good about that. Volleyball goes 2-0, although not aesthetically pleasing. But for all intents and purposes, that environment seemed to be top notch going on at the Bob.
Oh yeah, the noise in that fifth set, loudest it's been all season, and that place gets pretty loud.
Attaboy. So a little goodwill, and you weren't crying for Argentina or playing the violin when the Buccaneers appear not to know what to do for a 2-point conversion. Don't probably have that on the script, do you, Tampa Bay? Like, what was going on?
Yeah, I'll take it. It's funny because it seemed like there was a delay of game on the touchdown itself, and then they actually got one. They push it even too far on the extra or the 2-point conversion. So, it's the entire way down the field. It's like you knew like the way they were playing is going to come down to a 2-point conversion. Yeah. They're just not stopping them here. It's soft, big cushions and covers. It's drop back, no busts, and doesn't really work when there's like 3 minutes and change. You can kind of just take whatever you need to at that point. But hey, they got it done. Got just enough offense in the start, and the defense is really starting to settle in.
Hey, do you feel like, not to go all NFL during Nebraska Preps postgame, but your quarterback did have a 103 rating yesterday, even in spite of the pick. Do you feel like, what are the Vikings missing when you watch them? Are they not the most perplexing team? They can't blame a guy that's no longer their head coach anymore. Like, what is it about Minnesota where they sleepwalk? Is it just Cousins?
Well, I guess you can go with the Cousins primetime curse for last week. This one was the noon o'clock or the noon hour. So not really a primetime game there, but hey, they found a way to steal it there at the end. But yeah, it's kind of a confusing team. There's some talent there, but they've never been able to put it all together. And I think O'Connell's doing a decent enough job. I think we've seen some good things from him so far, so we'll see if that ends up being a real upgrade and can push him over the top. Only a few weeks in now, but it's a confusing team for sure.
Before we get off the NFL, and Tampa Bay's good against the run, but were you a little alarmed that you could not run the ball yesterday?
Not really. I don't think anybody can run the ball against Tampa. That's kind of been.
Remember when we used to just think it was because teams got behind?
Yeah.
No, they're actually pretty good against the run.
Yeah. With those linebackers, with obviously we know Levante David and how smart he is, but with his partners back there, they covered the closing speed. Obviously, you got Vita Vea up front. You just can't run against that guy.
Huge dude. Goodness
huge.
Gracious.
Yeah, man. If you like nose tackle play there, interior lineman play there, Kenny Clark and Vita Vea, two of the best in the league there.
How about how Kenny Clark has like been rebirthed? Like people knew what he was capable of potentially, just showed you peaks. But in Green Bay, well, he's a different kind of player.
Well, and he's still firmly in the middle of his prime. He's in his mid to late 20s there. Yeah. He came in. They drafted him as a pretty young guy, relatively speaking, for football, and he's been tearing it up basically his entire career. So it's fun to see kind of what he does every week, especially considering the amount of arm bars and holdings that. Like that, like I get there's like some degree of holding on every play and you can't call everything, but how many times can you have an offensive lineman put his arm around a defensive lineman's helmet and hold him back that way and not get a call? Like that was it was like every other play you were seeing is like, wait, what is that?
You're like, I
don't think that's legal.
I think they usually call that.
And then you had the one where Clark did get the sack where the other guy shot between two players being held on both of them.
Do you like getting the slow-mo on those?
It's like, I saw it live. Like, I didn't need the slow-mo on that one.
TV is not doing this officiating crew any favors right about now. As we,
I was going to say, no, we've.
All right.
Yes.
So that's your NFL minute. Well, you know it's inevitable because during basketball season there will be a couple of sessions where we'll just go NBA for like 6-7 minutes and then have to move off.
This is a good week, though, to kind of stall a little bit, considering some of the results we had in Class A on Friday. It's
it got out of hand in a hurry with some of the scores. We can start with number one West Side, which was a potential top 10 matchup. I mean, Norfolk was in the receiving votes category, and I felt like I didn't think it was going to be the type of outcome that the game dictated once it broke out, but got off to a quick start. They turned the ball over early. Christian Jones had the pick, got it down to the 1, turned it into a quick score, and then it kind of just snowballed from there.
Yeah, and we sound like Anthony Rizak got banged up a little bit there. But
did not play after halfway through the second quarter. A thumb came down on the helmet, which is almost every OC's fear when dealing with a quarterback. But he's good to go. X-rays checked out, and he'll be ready to roll. We had a tough one traveling out to North Platte this Friday. Gretna full steam ahead. There was no look ahead in their matchup. Some thought that maybe, Bellevue West may be in the front mirror as opposed to the rear view mirror. No. Yeah. They handled a Bellevue East bunch who came in with a little momentum, 3-1 record, feeling pretty good. I think they knew it was going to be tough just considering how the schedule had played out. But Gretna doing Gretna things.
Well, and again, it continues to be Isaiah Weber doing the damage. I think, 3 straight weeks he's been over 100 yards rushing now, 12 carries, 134 yards, 3 scores. Zane Ford has only completed half his passes, but averaged 22 yards a completion. So that's not too bad there. Had a 50-yarder, 4 touchdowns. So, again, even on an off completion day, he's still hitting for some big plays. They got Alex Wilcoxon in there for some QB snaps there.
I think the biggest thing for Zane is, it's kind of his receiving core is drastically different. Yeah. So I think he's kind of feeling his way along a little bit in terms of how to get used to new faces and new places, timing.
And especially after losing Joe Roll.
Arguably one of the best receivers in the state.
Yeah, and the guy he had the best chemistry with, that he had thrown the most passes to. So, but yeah, that's like 63-9. It was 28-3 in the first quarter, 28-6 in the second quarter. And looking like a lot of backups got playing time in the second half for Gretna, and like you said, sets up for a big week this week. Continuing the trend. Elkhorn South, 84-14 over Omaha Northwest.
Yeah, that's a little troubling, right? That was 57-0 at the half. It was 44-0 early in the second quarter. There's just not much I think Elkhorn South could do to slow that one down.
I think I saw that Cole Ballard had 4 carries for 4 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So it's not like again, your best player only touched the ball 4 times, and they still put up 84 points. So it just had some rough matchups. Some teams that just were not ready to play on the same field as the best teams in the state, and they happened to kind of all fall on this day on the calendar.
Yeah, Omaha North, who had the Thursday night matchup, just rolling right along as they hammered Omaha Central.
Yeah, and Tayshawn Porter doing what he does, almost 100 yards, 7.5 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. But story there, Sebastian Serco, again, continuing to settle in here after missing the start of the season. Completed 13 of his 14 passes for 274 yards.
I'm curious, is that efficient? Is that good?
I believe that's a 92.9% completion rate.
That'd be good in class, too. That's an A.
So, yeah, again, we're looking ahead to that big matchup with Elkhorn South later in the season as they kind of work through the easier part of their schedule. But they spread the ball around, too. You had a bunch of guys with receiving yards there. So, this team is continuing, I think, to kind of settle in. It was 27-0 at the end of the first quarter. And then, again, they kind of hit the cruise button for the rest of the game. Right off the bat, Champ Davis, big kickoff return inside the 5 in the first play of the game.
Yeah.
It's
a quick 90-yarder to get things started, wasn't
it? Not bad. Special teams are pretty important in football. So, that's So yeah, those are the top 4 teams. That is a lot to a very little in terms of the aggregate scoring there.
Hey, how about this one, though, which is the film that I've been on, just watching all of, well, we play them awfully close to each other. So North Platte took on Kearney, 19-6 final. Kearney just continuing to find ways to win. They've got a toughie this week in the rivalry versus Grand Island, but don't necessarily make the all-bus team, but really well coached. They have a lot of good players, right? That's a well-coached, well-disciplined team that found a way to win a tough, kind of grimy football game against North Platte.
Yeah, and Kearney just still can't really establish much on the ground. They had 23 carries for 58 yards in the game. But you give up 6 points, you're going to have a chance to win. And that's what they did. And the 6 didn't come until the fourth quarter. That was 21-0 heading into the fourth there for Kearney. Traven Beckman, 3 touchdowns, 11 of 18 passing. Again, guy like I was impressed with at week 1, really in his first start, got up to a slow start and settled in, and seems like he's been playing pretty well ever since for them and giving them a chance to win all their games. So, yeah, that's, again, North Platte, not what they were last year, but that's still a good program. And to win, to hold that team to 6 points, that's an impressive showing for the Kearney defense.
Creighton Prep, the best 500 team in the state. I think most people will agree.
Yeah, you can throw them in with the top there in terms of just another easy win there. It was 37-0 against Burke. Again, we've talked about Burke is kind of rebuilding. Interesting note for Prep. Looks like they had Sam Stessman out there catching a couple passes, and they tried out Tony Coniglio, sophomore at quarterback. Completed 2 of his 4 passes for 31 yards.
Just can't quite lock in on that quarterback situation.
Dean Donaldson's 4 of 10 for just 33 yards. Did throw a touchdown pass to Michael Burt. But Sharmar Brown, 105 yards on the ground, 2 scores, and it looked like they went heavy with the Ezra Vedral, 6 carries, 40 yards, and a touchdown. So
it's interesting, too. You know, Burke flagged 11 times, and for penalties, it kind of bogged that game down, but kind of lost in the shuffle for Burke as I really like Blankenship Jones. He's kind of having to do everything. He's playing a little quarterback sometimes for Burke. He's outstanding in the secondary. They're just trying to figure out ways to get the ball in his hands. I think he's one of the better players in the Metro that kind of flies under the radar because his team doesn't rack up a ton of wins, but he's a pretty good player.
Yep. So, again, like you said, Prep, that win moved Prep back to 500 there after the the rough start with the teams they played early on. And they're still figuring out that quarterback situation, but the rest of the team looks ready to go. So, if they do kind of find some rhythm there, then they'll be tough at the end of the season again. And then Bellevue West, kind of the last of the huge blowouts here. It was 68-17 against Omaha South, kind of bouncing back from that loss to Kearney. 68-17, again, just some of these scores this week. It's unfortunate, but I mean, you got to play all the games on the schedule. And Daniel Kalen, just kind of probably his easiest night of the season. Only attempted 18 passes, 189 yards, 4 touchdowns. They spread the ball around on the ground. Gio Contreras, 110 yards on 5 carries. Clayton Goff got in there, 6 carries, 49 yards, 2 touchdowns.
He's a good player.
Yeah,
I like him a lot.
Yeah, so that's just a junior there, so he's kind of working behind Contreras there, and so they did what they needed to there. That's again
pretty workmanlike.
Yeah.
And how about this one with Grand Island? Like, you know, they beat North Platte. They've got a couple weeks ago, so we wanted to watch that film. Last week they're coming off the win against now it's escaping me here. And it sets up the showdown for them against Kearney in a rivalry. I think Grand Island is and I said this when we beat them, Grand Island's a better team, I think, than than they looked against us. Offensively, they just couldn't get it going. They had less than 100 yards total offense.
It was 27-14 over Lincoln High.
Lincoln High, that's okay.
And we know they got some athletes.
So I'm very curious, and it's not just because, we play Kearney coming up after North Platte, but I'm curious to see. It's always easier when you've played against a team to be able to gauge the other team, right? Because you kind of know what it feels like to play against them. I'm watching, coming off the win against Fremont, I should say. I'm curious to see what Grand Island looks like against Kearney this Friday.
Yeah, impressive effort on both sides. They really contained Hudson Cunnings, who, despite Fremont's record, not a lot of people have done that. It's been a case where he's putting up numbers week in and week out.
He's pretty legit.
Held him to 84 yards passing and just 49 yards on the ground, and forced a turnover there. So good defensive effort. And then Jace Chrisman, 14 carries for 163 yards, 2 touchdowns, had a 72-yarder. Cohen Evans doing what he needed to at quarterback there with touchdown pass, 7 of 10 passing, 116 yards. So it's a team, again, they lost a lot last year, including all their key playmakers were, Kighton Fife pretty much was their offense last year, and a really good offensive player as well. And so the team that's had to replace a lot, but they're settling in now, and they're off to a great start to the season, 4-1 now. Again, there's a 38-14 win over Fremont, and like you said, now they go to Kearney. That'll be a big one on Friday night, 5 versus 8 there in the NEB Preps Coaches Bowl.
Yeah, speaking of kind of getting it together, righting the ship, Southeast, pretty impressive over Millard North. I think this score kind of surprised some people, and it took 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns from Millard North to get it to this point. They went into the fourth quarter down 42-14. Yeah. And I think that really caught some people's eye. Yeah. Coach Lamanji and I were following along, just kind of, we wanted to kind of see what was going on. And Owen Baxter, very efficient, and it turned into the Butenbach, the B2B show, as Cash and Max both had good performances. Yeah, and that's where I was on Thursday. And honestly, the big difference was turnovers. Millard North, and again, you said they fell behind early, but they got it going a little bit. They scored some late. They had a chance to kind of make that thing interesting. But Lincoln Southeast forced 4 turnovers, scored on 3 of them, and the 4th was an interception at the end of the half in the end zone. So they didn't get a chance to score on that, but it kept points off the board. Pierre Allen Jr., just sophomore there, the son of the former Husker, had a really impressive pick 6 there, where it kind of jumped out to a throw in the flat, tipped it up to himself, caught it, and ran it back. What do you think his upside is?
It'll be interesting to see kind of as he continues to grow. He's still a young guy, just 6'2".
He said just 6'2".
Dad was a pretty big guy, so or is. So we'll see kind of where his size settles in right now. He's kind of a smaller defensive end, playing for them, playing a little bit offense. So we'll have to see kind of where, like, how much more size he continues to add. But he was impressed. I heard his name a lot. I didn't see final.
Yeah, you and I were texting back and forth during that one.
Yeah. Let's see, there it is. So yeah, he had. There he is. 11 tackles. So yeah, I think that career high for him there. Again, just starting now as a sophomore. He played really well. It seemed like he was always around the ball. And then they had 2 interceptions, and that's part of the problem. Like Millard North, with the way their offense goes, like they've got to be able to hit some of those kind of big plays that out of the triple option, those kind of big chunk plays, and that's something they had done previously. They've had some big passing completions, and they just couldn't get. Evan Hansen just could not get on the same page with his receivers. He's only 3 for 10 passing for 52 yards. Did have a really nice touchdown catch for Pierce Mooberry.
Well, he can go get it, Ken.
He had 2 of their 3 receptions, and both of them were like, I'm taking this ball now.
Yeah, so he can go get it.
So, yeah, I was really impressed with Caden Vermas, 11 carries for 187 yards, 1 touchdown, and Hansen continued to run the ball again. And what They were without Colin Bogart, so I know you was impressed against you guys previous week. Again, another one of those sophomores, but he was out injured, so CT Thielen got the start. And Hansen, like throughout the first half, Hansen almost always kept the ball or gave the deep pitch. He rarely handed it off there to the fullback. Then Thielen opened the second half with an 80-some yard touchdown run. I believe it's 81-yard touchdown on their first play of the second half. And like, all right, maybe we can get the ball to this guy. And he ended up finishing with 19 carries for 194 yards and a touchdown by my count, with most of that done in the second half. So props to him for stepping up. And they found something there in the second half, a little bit better balance within their offense. But again, when you give the ball away that many times, just and they couldn't get stops between that. Like, again, Southeast scored 56 points, their highest point total since I don't know when.
If you're Southeast, how would you play?
The way that they played,
their offensive identity has been a little bit disjointed.
I think that offensive line is starting to settle in a little bit better, and you can see that in the play of Max Butenbeck in particular, who he's a guy he's pretty patient. Like the way his running style, he'll kind of pick his way through traffic, find a spot, and then hit it. He's not a guy that's just going to run right in the pile, hammer it. He's not a guy that's going to necessarily bounce it outside every time. He's a guy that's going to be looking for his hole. He's got good balance, again, good patience the way he runs. So you got to get some holes for him. And I think they started to do that. They really dominated the line of scrimmage on Thursday night. And both Butenbachs actually had a really nice game. Cash had a good game as well, kind of playing behind him. Butenbach 18 carries, 116 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Southeast did, and Cash 9 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. And Owen Baxter, they don't need him to be a volume guy, but he had some.
You'll take 6 or 7 though with the big plays,
and that's exactly what it was. It was big plays. It was, I think, at least 3 different third and longs he converted either through the air or with his feet. And so that's what you need him. You don't necessarily need him to throw 20 passes and throw for 300 yards, but if he makes the timely plays to complement that running game, and he can make plays with his feet and his arm. And that's what he did on Friday night. Like Millard North had a couple chances to get off the field. They put Southeast behind the chains, and Baxter and a couple of his weapons made plays when they really needed to. So that was a difference on the game. Like if you've got a timely or a quarterback making timely plays, a good running game, and you've got a pretty tough front defensively, then you have a chance to win a lot of games. So Southeast, a bit of a slow start again. They opened with a couple of tough games, but they look to have kind of found their stride now. Again, that offensive line is playing better, really settling in, and now they've got a big one on Friday with Lincoln Southwest. They've already lost one city battle with Lincoln East.
Yeah, that was early week 2.
Yeah, and so now this is and Southwest beat East, so this is a chance, another Lincoln game here. Southeast got a lot on the line. They're going to play at Southwest.
Yeah, we'll round out top 10 with they had a bye with Padilla, La Vista South sitting at 4-1. They get Omaha South this week, and then a pretty stiff test as they'll get Gretna. So back-to-back weeks, Gretna will go with Bellevue West and then Padilla, La Vista South.
Yep, and important note, Cam Gozell's back from Millard South, who kind of righted the ship after a rough stretch of games without him, with the 49-10 at Lincoln North Star on Friday. So that they're 2-3 now, but they've got their quarterback back. They're 2-0 with their quarterback, and they've got a big one on Thursday against Lincoln East, who handled Columbus 42-14. Jeter Worthley continues to settle in there, 278 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and Malachi Coleman, 6 catches, 81 yards, touchdown. So that should be another good one there on Thursday night.
Yeah, and I think the matchup of the night was in Class B with Elkhorn traveling to Bennington, and what was a close 1-score game at the half turned into more Bennington dominance as that game went along. And weird, another bird in a long line of good offensive players for Bennington.
Yeah, and, I mean, again, Elkhorn got off to a good start. They were up 7-0 at the end of the first. Bennington
led 7-6 until the final minutes of the second quarter.
Yeah, Bennington kind of made that push and then hung around third quarter, and then Bennington just, I mean, their talent, they just have so many playmakers. And the guy that you mentioned who, really good player, hadn't necessarily been a huge difference maker in terms of production. He's just kind of part of the machine. Isaac Connor, 10 catches for 152 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still really good. And he and Bird, there's just nothing Elkhorn could do to stop them.
He is quietly coming into his own. You know, he's a multi-sport guy, and he can even swing the sticks too on the golf course. He's obviously a hooper, very good football player, easy kid to cheer for. Like, when they're throwing the ball with efficiency to go along with how good they play defense, boy, Bennington's going to find themselves right back on a potential, not to disrespect anybody in Class B, a potential collision course with Omaha Gross if both teams continue their winning ways.
Yeah, and Bird, 284 yards, 24-36 passing, 4 touchdowns. Didn't even need to run the ball in that one. Nick Colbert, 91 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, caught a couple of passes. So, again, that's when you've got Bird and Connor going, that's as good a 1-2 passing combination as you're going to see in Class B. And in the end, they were too much for a good Elkhorn team who, again, they with kind of their old school style, throw out a bunch of running backs and tight ends out there, and who needs wide receivers, and just run that option game. And KJ Schenk's a pretty tough back there for them, but man, it's tough when you get teams that are explosive trying to, and I don't know that Elkhorn can quite keep up with that offensively, but yeah, that's 5-0 start for Bennington. Jumped back up to number 1 with that win. Obviously, Gross jumped up to number 1 in the coaches poll after a 21-14 win against Elkhorn.
And they hammered Ralston on Saturday. And I'm not sure what we can learn about Gross. Maybe Plattsmouth, but they've got Plattsmouth, Norris, and they'll get the forfeit with Buena Vista before they close out with Scott. So if Gross can stay healthy, they should be in pretty good shape to start the playoffs.
Yeah, and you mentioned kind of collision course there. Bennington's got a big one against Blair, but we saw that Blair kind of had their first test against Gross, and Gross handled them. So we'll see if they were able to learn anything from that. Blair 23-3 win over Elkhorn Mount Michael this week, but those are the 2 5-0 teams at the top of Class B. How
about the preview of Scotts Bluff and Waverly this week, which should tell us a lot about both teams.
Yeah, and that's what I was just going to say. Next up, number 3 was Scotts Bluff, who they got it done, but 28-21 win, a little bit closer than maybe you would expect against a Grand Island Northwest team that is just 1-4 so far this season. That's let's see, looking at, there we go. Yeah, so they had Braden Stoll, 100 yards passing and 136 yards and a score on the ground. Sebastian Boyle, 28 carries for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I watched him a couple of times on Huddle just with the North Platte. Just film exchange, you get common opponents. Boy, Boyle is a good player. Man, does he run hard.
Yeah, so seemed like Scottsbluff had no problems moving the ball, but just weren't able to put the ball in the end zone early on. They were down 14-7 at halftime, then tied it up in third quarter and then won the fourth 7-0. So, again, that Stoll Boyle 1-2 punch, that's tough for teams to deal with. But Northwest, Austin Payne, 309 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. So that's kind of how they're able to hang in it. They could not run the ball against Scottsbluff at all. 28 yards rushing total.
Yeah, if you're looking for a couple top 10 matchups, there's that one, Scottsbluff and Waverly. And then you've got Scott, who had an open week with the forfeit, taking on Pius, who, quietly, tough schedule, but sitting at 3-2, ranked number 8. That should be another fantastic matchup.
Yeah, I'm looking at potentially checking out that one on Thursday. You mentioned the Waverly, who continues to roll 4-1 now, 35-7 over a good York team. Just kind of controlling that one from start to finish. So Waverly sitting there at number 5 behind Elkhorn, and I think they've really found their stride. So you got Blair at 6. I already mentioned that result. So that's kind of the top of Class B there. We'll see here with Scott and Pius. I think Scott's been trying to figure some things out. We'll see if they were able to get some good work done during the bye week or the forfeit week, and as Pius comes to Omaha.
Yeah, we'll recap C1 to start next week. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Next week, it's a Nebraska Preps postgame. That's Jacob Padilla. I'm Old DB. We'll be back. Don't you dare miss us.